Good morning, guys. Just a kind of update then on the current situation in terms of the work that you've submitted. So you can see a up-to-date view of the tracking document, which you can access on Teams. And you can see that we are making progress in terms of beginning to fill this spreadsheet with passes for the 2 assignments that have so far been completed. Okay, so I'm going to keep reminding you about that. If you're still a near pass or a marked piece of work, then please do act on those comments as soon as you can and resubmit. And tell me about it if you've not had any feedback. And we'll try and get that spreadsheet to turn increasingly green. Okay, for tab on. So just a reminder about where we're at. Okay, so we're working through unit 17, and so far we've completed 2 assignments. So the P1 explain the concept of the Internet of Everything, and M1 analysing the impact of the IOE on the society and environment. So 2 assignments done. The next assignment we're going to look at is P2. And this is explaining the 4 pillars of the Internet of Everything. So that's the context of this particular assignment. Okay, so the purpose of today's lesson is really to kind of get you up and running with this assignment and talk to you about the deadline and also how you go about completing it. Okay, so the deadline for this assignment will be a week tomorrow, so a week on Friday, the 1st of May. That's when it needs to be submitted into Teams, ready for marking. Okay, and then so how do you actually go about doing this assignment and what does it involve? Well, it's a pass piece of work, so in terms of its length, it's not as substantial as the merit piece of work that you've just completed. In terms of length for this one, I would recommend between 1.5 to 2 pages probably would be about a suitable amount of writing for this particular assignment. Okay, you still need to reference information as and when you use it, but you're less reliant on that in this particular piece than certainly the merit piece of work. Okay, so the 4 pillars that you need to talk about are displayed on the screen then. Okay, so you need to sort of talk about each of these categories and explain aspects within them, what they actually mean, and why ultimately all these pillars kind of interlink with one another to form the overall Internet of Everything. Okay, so we're going to start with people, and with people, a couple of things that you need to talk about. So the first, and the starting point for this assignment for the people category, is outlining the fact that we're all going to be affected by the IOE, and it doesn't matter who you are in society, and you can pick any examples from this list, or you can even think of your own examples, but you're really just trying to make the point really that everyone in the world is going to be affected probably by Internet of Everything technologies at some point. So whether that's police using drones perhaps to track down and police and improve the safety of citizens, or doctors being able to remotely monitor their patients, you just need to go through a range of different examples of people from all walks of life and society and just make this point that actually the IOE affects everyone. Okay, and just make sure you kind of give a brief example of a technology that particular person might use. So that's the starting point for this assignment as an introduction. Okay, so the people that this IOE is going to affect. Okay, another key thing that you need to do in this particular section, under the people section, is make it really clear using 2 different examples the difference between people as an endpoint and people as a participant. Okay, so I'm going to sort of talk you through 2 examples. You can use one of these examples, but then you need to, based on your understanding, come up with your own example that fits this definition. Okay, so you can use one of these 2 examples that I'm going to discuss. Okay, so I'll come back to that in a second. The last part of this assignment is just highlighting the fact why people are part of the IOE, and sort of justifying, obviously, these technologies that have been created, that they're being developed to hopefully improve our lives, help us make better decisions, and encourage us to have better behaviours, and even actually to make our lives more efficient and give us more free time so that we can do more things that we enjoy doing. So make sure you kind of highlight that as well in this section as to why people want these IoE technologies in the first place. Okay, but let's go to back to the sort of the nub of the first of this first section, which is endpoint versus participant. Okay, so if you have a look at the image in the top right hand corner here, we've got a lady that's obviously doing some fitness work, and we can see on her wrist that she's wearing a fitness tracker. Okay, so from our viewpoint, the term participant, well, she would be considered a participant because she's wearing a wristband and she's actually participating in the Internet of Everything, because that wristband is basically collecting data about her and her activity. So she's actually an active participant in the IoE. She's also an endpoint because if you think about it, the data that is collected as she's participating and wearing that wristband is actually then turned into information, which as the endpoint, and if we look down here and I'm sort of highlighting it in a rough way, is then being converted into information that she can then use to actually make better decisions, okay, and improve aspects of her health. Okay, so she's a participant because she actually collects data about her life and her activities through the wristband. She's an endpoint because the actual information that's generated from that data is for her. Okay, and is to help her make better decisions about her health. Okay, one more example. This is quite a good one that's going to be relevant to a few of you, I suspect, in the coming year. So if you're learning to drive and once you actually passed your test, one of the things that your insurance company is likely going to require you to do is to install one of these black boxes in your car. Okay, so you know this is an Internet of Everything technology, isn't it? It collects data and it communicates it to devices. So let's talk about you know, this GPS tracker for car insurance. As a participant, you could say that you yourself is a participant because it's installed in your car and it's collecting data about your driving. So you know, it's again a device that's encouraging you to participate in the IoE. Endpoints, well, the endpoint for this device, in terms of the information that it generates, well, you could actually sort of, you know, develop that a little bit further than the first example, because we could say really there's maybe two endpoints for this particular technology. Of course, you've got yourself, and if we look on the right hand side here, and I'll just highlight it again in a very rough manner, you can see that you've got a report that gives you information about the quality of your driving, you know, how quickly you accelerate and how sharply you brake, and obviously that gives you statistics and helps incentivize and improve your behavior in terms of the quality of your driving and make you a safer driver on the road. So as an endpoint, you're receiving that useful information and hopefully it's going to influence your behavior. Another endpoint, and I suspect some of you might have already managed to think about this, of course, is going to be your insurance company, because your insurance company is going to want information about the quality of your driving, and they can use that information to help analyze and improve the incentives that they offer to you guys to try and encourage you to be better drivers and to try and reduce your insurance premiums that you pay. Okay, so that's the key thing. You need to be giving and explaining this idea of what an endpoint is and what a participant is. And, you know, they can be the same person, but you just need to make sure you explain it using a specific example, like a fitness tracker or like a GPS tracker or whatever other devices you can think of, okay, devices that collect data about people's lives, okay. Describe, you know, them as a participant, what data is it collecting about their lives, and the endpoint in terms of what information it generates and who might actually use that information that's generated, okay. That's the understanding you're looking for on this part of the assignment. Okay, and that's it for people, okay, so for people, they're the areas that you need to cover. The other area I'm just going to talk about today and introduce you to, so you can get up and running with the first half of this assignment, is the things section here. Okay, so again, the first thing, you're explaining why this is a fundamental pillar of the IoE again, and a nice start point for this particular one is to obviously highlight that basically anything, any object can be a thing on the Internet of Things, if that kind of makes sense. Okay, so whether it's, you know, cars, aeroplanes, printers, light bulbs, fire extinguishers, you know, you name it. You just want to give a range of different examples to kind of highlight this fact that you know, any object potentially is part of the Internet of Everything, or could become part of the Internet of Everything in the future. Okay, so that's the starting point for this section. Once you've done that, you need to go into a little bit more detail than we have done on the previous assignments in terms of what makes a thing. And I think obviously you're kind of well versed now in that things are comprised of sensors, but what I want you really to do here is analyze the range of sensors that things might include. Okay, and you've got a nice screenshot here sort of outlining, you know, all the different types of sensors that IoT devices might contain that can collect data. Okay, so try and give a good range of different sensors and explain what data they collect and the kind of device that might want to collect that data as well. Okay, obviously you've got some some devices like your smartphones, which aren't featured on here, which collect, you know, could collect you know, sound through the microphone, or images and video through a camera. Make sure that you give a nice range of different sensors that devices contain. Okay, you might want to choose one or two devices and just highlight the, you know, the range of sensors within those devices. Okay, you might also get some help by looking back at your first assignment with this one as well. Okay, but try and give a nice range of different sensors, at least 5 sensors that are embedded into these devices. Okay, also highlight the data they collect as well. The other part of the things section is obviously the ability to communicate, and here again you just want to kind of give an outline of how these devices and the methods they use to actually send information. Okay, so you've got a range of different technologies here which you have some familiarity with from Unit 1 that we'd done in the first year of the course. So you want to sort of just talk about these technologies. So we've got some wireless technologies here, haven't we? I'd say in this category. So some wireless technologies, and you can talk about the characteristics of those particular wireless technologies. You know, the distances they can send the data, the volume of the data, what kind of Internet of Things devices might utilize those different wireless technologies. Yeah, and some just general characteristics. Of course, the other category of connection that some of these devices will rely on will be wired connections, and again you could maybe get into there the difference between fiber optic sort of networks and connections and speeds and transfer rates, and compare that with maybe sort of traditional, well, we'd probably call it Ethernet if we're being lazy. If we're not being lazy, then we'd call it unshielded twisted pair connections, wouldn't we? And yeah, talk about some of the transfer rates and the speeds and the volumes of data that can be transmitted, and again some of the IoT devices that might utilize that form of connection. Okay, so yeah, the other thing that you could also mention here as well is also the other key characteristic of a thing is that it needs to have a power source. Okay, and you could just talk about maybe 1 or 2 different battery types, or obviously a lot of them will be directly plugged into mains electricity and get their supply that way. Okay, so that's all I'm going to say for now in terms of the presentation, and I'm just going to show you one other resource that you've got access to help you do this assignment. So if I just come out of a presentation, so I'm also going to attach with this assignment this sort of checklist, and you can use it just to make sure that you're covering all the required areas for this assignment. Okay, and because you're starting on the first half, this would be a good target maybe to have done for Monday. On Monday I'll introduce the data and the processing pillars and talk a little bit about what kind of things you need to be discussing there too. But this is an explain question, so it's lots of examples, and yeah, make sure you're kind of working your way through this checklist and you can't go too far wrong. Any questions, please message me through Teams, and yeah, this is the next assignment, and it was all counting towards your overall grade. So yeah, hopefully a nice one to get completed by next Friday. See you later.